Globalization, the process by which different countries around the world are able to connect with one another. This has allowed for the diffusion of ideas, products, technology, jobs, information, and so on around the world. So it is largely regarded as a positive force in the world. However, along with the benefits of this increased interconnectivity have come social, cultural, environmental, political, and economic repercussions. Globalization had started due to the Silk Road 2000 years ago, as this was the first time in history luxury products from China started to appear in Rome. In the 7th to 15th centuries, the idea of trade and globalization was further spread by Islamic merchants through the spice routes. Global trade started to occur in the 15th to 18th centuries during the Age of Discovery. However, globalization truly started to occur around the 19th century due to the Industrial Revolution. Some key features of globalization include integration of society, international economic integration, global consumerism, global tourism, media imperialism, and transnational cooperation. Due to globalization, there have been many global environmental changes in global trends, and the economy has been integrated more than ever. This has led to political activity shifting from traditional national political systems to increasingly taking place at a more global level. Political globalization refers to the growth of political cooperation between countries and integration of national politics with the rest of the world. On an international level, politics can take place through supranational organizations. A supranational organization is an international group or union in which the power and influence of member nations transcend national boundaries to share in decision-making and vote on issues or policies that affect each member nation. Some examples of supranational organizations include European Union, United Nations, and the World Trade Organization. Supranational organizations like such help to politically integrate member nations to the rest of the world. Increased political globalization due to these supranational organizations can have several positive implications on the world. Firstly, supranational organizations can help to increase access to international aid and contribute to world peace. This has been one of the many successes of the United Nations, as they have helped aid 90 million people, feed 34 million refugees, and operated 71 peacekeeping missions. The integration of local political systems with the rest of the world also has a number of positive impact on less economic developed countries. The World Bank has targeted to lift people out of absolute poverty and have provided 770 million people with essential health service from World Bank loans. Another supranational organization called the World Trade Organization has helped to reduce poverty by removing restrictions on LEDC products and allowing them more opportunities to trade into prosperity. Lastly, the International Monetary Fund has also focused on underdeveloped countries by providing them with both financial support and education. This organization has also established a monetary reserve fund and stabilized foreign exchange rates by controlling competitive currency devaluation. However, increased political globalization also has numerous negative implications. One of the concerns over increased political globalization is that state sovereignty is greatly reduced. Due to political globalization, nations are politically integrated to each other by being members in unions and supranational organizations. In these organizations, member nations transcend national boundaries to vote on issues or policies concerning the member nations. This causes the local national authorities to not have a lot of control over the people and property within their territory. So this usually leaves the local government and military force as being perceived as powerless. Another concern over increased political globalization is that the majority of supranational organizations are controlled by major Western nations. This has led to some organizations favoring more economically developed countries over less economically developed countries. This is one of the biggest criticisms that the World Trade Organization, United Nations, and the International Monetary Fund have faced, as they are controlled by major Western nations. The United Nations in particular is a bureaucratic organization and favors the United Nations Security Councils. Finally, some supranational organizations often have delayed and ineffective response to crisis. The United Nations have been ineffective in peacekeeping and avoiding conflict, as there was a genocide in Rwanda in 1996, the Iraq War in 2003, and a somewhat recent conflict in Myanmar in 2016. The International Monetary Fund also has been criticized for having a delayed response to crisis and implying controversial policies. The weak Greek economy collapsed further, largely due to the austerity programs imposed by the IMF and Eurozone. Austerity programs are reductions in government spending and/or increase in tax revenues to avoid a debt crisis. However, this makes it even more difficult for the economy to pay off the debt, thus harming them.
Economic globalization is the idea of the world being connected through production, markets, technology, goods, and services. Examples of economic globalization could be trading agreements, such as global supply chains, which helps economically because global supply chains are a distribution of goods and services which bring economic growth. Another example of economic globalization is multinational corporations. They are another example of economic globalization, as these corporations trade and operate in multiple countries, allowing economic growth around the world. Benefits to globalization would be that there will be a better connection with other countries as businesses connect around the world, which leads to economic growth for everyone, because if one part of the company does well, the rest will also benefit. Another benefit to economic globalization is outsourcing of jobs, as this allows migrants to work overseas, leading to economic growth in both the host and home country, as the migrant workers are providing services to the host country and also providing his or her earnings to the home country, as the worker may send back the money to his family or to the worker's account. Even though there are some advantages to economic globalization, there are also disadvantages, such as contagions. Contagion is a disadvantage because if one company in one country is connected to multiple companies from all over the world and has an economic crash, it could affect everyone, including people working in the same country, even though they may be located in different countries. This is like a domino effect where one problem occurs, then it will also affect the others as well. An example of this can be seen today due to COVID-19. As businesses and trading slows down due to a lower demand of supplies in one country, this then will also affect the rest of the company, leading to a decrease of economic growth around the world.
As globalization includes cooperation between nations in order to make decisions, countries have come together to create international policies that relate to environmental protection. An example of this would be the Paris Agreement, which is an agreement that deals with mitigating greenhouse gas emissions and therefore reducing the impacts of global warming. As of February 2020, 194 states, as well as the European Union, has signed the agreement. Ensuring that this agreement is implemented and that each country meets their commitments will ensure that climate change-caused damage is limited. Secondly, as previously mentioned, trade is a key feature of globalization that has had numerous benefits globally. One such benefit is that due to international trade and technology transfer, countries have better access to environmentally friendly technologies such as solar panels and wind turbines. Global initiatives such as the LDC Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Initiative for Sustainable Development have already been formed, which is set to bring sustainable clean energy to less developed countries. Renewable energy has a significantly more positive impact on the environment as opposed to fossil fuels, which need to be burned in order to produce energy and so cause greenhouse gas emissions in copious amounts. Forms of renewable energy such as hydropower, solar power, wind power, geothermal power, and so on are more sustainable alternatives. More frequent use of these sustainable energy sources will be able to reduce the largely detrimental impact that fossil fuels have on the environment, and this can be made possible due to trade and technology transfer. Increased trade, however, requires increased shipping, and due to shipping, carbon dioxide emissions have increased significantly. International trade has grown over the last decade, and so more greenhouse gas emitting transportation such as trucks and ships are required to carry goods. Greenhouse gases trap heat in the atmosphere, which is how global warming occurs. Furthermore, due to globalization, goods can be manufactured and produced in different countries for cheaper costs, and so the prices are lower for consumers as well, but this has caused increased consumption at an alarming rate. As people begin to buy and use larger quantities of products, more and more waste is produced. These products may include used technology, clothing, plastic products, and so on. This waste either sits in landfills or is incinerated, and although waste production is inevitable, overconsumption has produced a staggering amount, which is evident in these statistics for plastic and electronic waste. This graph makes it clear that only a small portion of this waste is actually recycled compared to the amount incinerated. Burning waste, although an efficient and easier form of waste management, is highly detrimental to the environment. When waste is incinerated, greenhouse gases are emitted into the atmosphere, and so waste production has an impact on global warming as well. Landfills, another common form of waste management, are also harmful to the environment, as toxic chemicals from the waste can end up contaminating water supplies and polluting soil. Moreover, carbon dioxide and methane are produced during the decomposition of waste. Finally, globalization has led to increased migration, and this can cause overpopulation in some places. When an area is overly populated, more waste is produced as there are more people to consume the products. In this way, globalization has significantly contributed to overconsumption and therefore has escalated waste production. Globalization has brought about cultural integration as people have been able to share their cultural food, traditions, beliefs, and so on, allowing other people to understand a culture different to their own. Immigration is one of the most significant ways in which this cultural integration has been able to take place. When people move away from their countries of origin, they bring parts of their culture along with them and introduce it to the host country. For example, Singapore has a multi-ethnic society, and so people of various different cultural groups coexist within the country and participate in celebrating each other's festivals such as Chinese New Year, Hari Raya, and Christmas. Also, due to international cultural exchange, aspects of some cultures in particular have become extremely popular worldwide. For example, Japanese movies and American fast food. Overall, cultural exchange has increased our interconnectivity and has allowed people to better understand foreign values, customs, traditions, and so on, as well as share our own with the rest of the world, thus making people more aware and accepting of the various different ways of life on Earth. On the other hand, this interconnectivity has given rise to cultural imperialism, which is when aspects of a culture begin to dominate other cultures. In today's world, Western culture can be considered the most dominant, and so some of its aspects have been adopted by other cultures. From a positive view, Westernization has given rise to a common language for the world, English, which has allowed people from different countries to communicate more easily. However, as people find English to be more important, local languages are gradually being forgotten as they're starting to be used less. Some cultural customs and traditions are now practiced less as well, as people have started conforming to Western culture. For example, in India, many people have stopped wearing traditional clothing in favor of wearing Western clothes, and the custom of eating meals with their hands is also slowly going out of practice as people are beginning to only use utensils. Due to the influence of the USA, American products and brands have spread worldwide. Starbucks and McDonald's, for instance, are popular American food chains that can be found all over the world. The number of their outlets has increased worldwide as American fast food has become popular, which is causing people to lose interest in their local cultural food and is therefore putting pressure on local food businesses. This is an example of homogenization, which is when people conform to the norms of one culture, but this threatens individual cultures and puts them at risk of being gradually forgotten.
Globalization is the idea of human interaction between the world through culture, religion, and technology. An example of social globalization would be social media, as media apps such as Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook help share people's ideas and lives, where anyone from around the world can reply and interact back with you through your devices. A positive aspect of social globalization is social protection. Social protection is defined by the United Nations as a protection of people's well-being, meaning security, medical services, and education. For example, social protection will protect certain war victims, such as war territories where it has displaced a huge amount of population, which can be seen in Syria. But too much social protection may not be the best for the country. For example, North Korea may take this to the extreme. Negative impacts of social globalization that we can see today would be fake news and misinformation. This is because when you have such a big platform, it can also cause extremist views and non-factual and exaggerated ideas to spread, causing chaos for no reason. Another negative impact would be outsourcing of jobs, as this can affect communities, such as workers in horrible working conditions, for example, shipbreaking. Shipbreaking is the process of breaking apart big cargo ships, and workers have to do this with no safety equipment and poor wages. This can have a bad effect on the community, with major health issues and also resulting in losses of family members caused by toxic working conditions, which leads to poor families as no one would be working anymore.
So where will globalization take us? We believe that globalization will begin to decline, as we have seen from the economic, political, environmental, social, and cultural implications of globalization. The disadvantages are beginning to outweigh the advantages. Now, especially in the wake of the current COVID-19 crisis, we are already beginning to see some of the harmful impacts of global interconnectivity. For example, as a BBC article on the economic impact of the crisis said, "When we look back at 2003, at the SARS epidemic, China accounted for 4% of global output," she says. Now China accounts for 4 times as much, 16%. So that means that whatever is happening in China affects the world to a much larger extent. This shows how countries' excessive reliance on one other can be dangerous. Overall, people are becoming more aware of the harmful effects of globalization on the global economy, state sovereignty, the environment, cultural individuality, and society in general, so it is clear that deglobalization is on the rise.